questions, and then we'll have a little discussion, and we'll open it up to you. As I've watched and worked on these things, it has always amazed me that you did all of those in a very compressed frame of time. It was like 7-8 years. Is that right?
That is correct.
So I guess my question about that is, you started doing these before there was an MTV, before there was like a machine that expected these music videos, if you could call them that. But do you want to speak a little to how you got started doing films and visual work in the first place? Because it came from a place very different from what I think most people connect bands and music videos to in terms of a marketing, object.
Well, they hadn't defined and labeled film shorts music videos yet, luckily for us. We were audiovisual artists that were making short films, naively and ideally. And we weren't sure how we would ever use them. We had this kind of utopian idea that video discs were going to be real.
They were for a minute.
Well, they kind of were.
Yeah.
It was a time when there were these big players like RCA player, the Pioneer player, I think a Magnavox player. And what was incredible is, of course, in the most dysfunctional end of capitalism, they were all incompatible. And they were very expensive, and so they'd each try to sell their machine with a catalog of content that they had. So if you bought one, you couldn't see the other stuff on the other two. And so it died. It died. But we kept making films.
The discs looked great though, because they just looked like your vinyl LP, but they were silver. They had something.
Laserdiscs were actually designed to resemble an LP because it was before compact discs.
Right.
The Laserdisc birthed the compact disc.
And I think that the worst of the three systems technologically, I think, was RCA, and it actually still touched the disc
needle.
like a
Yes.
needle.
The CED disc.
Yeah.
Yes. A horrible piece of technology, to say the least.
But of course, what we were doing had nothing to do with the industry that MTV created with the factory of baby pictures for a record company, where they turned what we were doing inside out. But luckily there was that short period, that intersection, where they needed content badly, and we had already put together, I think, 5 pieces, quote, in the can, because they were 16 millimeter films. And
So they liked us at the beginning.
yeah, they liked us because we could help them. And it did help us, because they were in 3 cities before they went national with American Express money and became a franchise. And so we were on all day long, because I think besides us, they had maybe 5 other things to show, including Video Killed the Radio Star and
Muggles, yes.
And so for a while we shined before they kind of turned on us. And I don't mean that in any, really dark way. I just mean they got rid of their mission statement and they started combining their playlist with top 40 hits. So they didn't really care about music video art at all after that.
It was our version of Spinal Tap, kind of,
So let's just talk a little bit about the evolution of how you got to Whip It, because that, I feel like Whip It or Whip Tease feels like a little bit of a turning point, because that, as some of you real deep Devo fans may know, Whip It was a sort of a sneak hit. It was not meant to be the single from the record, right? It was supposed to be, was it Girl You Want? And so you made a video for that first?
Sure, the record company listened to the Freedom of Choice album, and this was our last shot with them. They'd had it with Devo, but they were going to give it one shot. They said, Girl You Want, that's your hit. And they went with it, and it died. And they were ready to turn their backs on Devo, except a man named Cal Rudman, who was a huge regional programmer in the Southeast, back before there was this Clear Channel stuff and Parallel One radio stations controlling nationally everything. He could do what he wanted.
Yeah, it was crazy because we'd see pictures of him. He looked like a tractor salesman or something.
In Florida, right? Was it in Florida? I think he was in Florida, this guy?
What's that?
Was he in Florida, this
He
guy?
was in Florida.
Yeah.
He was, among other things.
And of course he had the mullet and he, wore polyester suits, and we couldn't understand why he liked Whip It.
Yeah, what a strange, such a strange thing for us. He went with it.
Yeah. Believe it or not, he wasn't plied with, cocaine and prostitutes by Warner Brothers or anything.
This was not payola, this was
No,
the real thing.
No, he liked
Grassroots.
it, and he pushed it on his Cal Rudman morning report. He pushed it around the Southeast and made its way up the East Coast into New York about 3 weeks later, and it exploded. So then Warner Brothers said, "You gotta make a video to Whip It," because before then, they thought Mark and I were just foolish artists that they were tolerating who wanted to use their, production promo money for making these useless films instead of cardboard stand-ups and t-shirts and things like that.
It's true, the marketing department at Warner's couldn't figure out why we wanted to make these films, and they didn't know what to do with them after we made them.
No, they had, and there wasn't really, there was, what was it called? Night Flight.
Oh, yeah.
There was Night Flight.
Right.
Yeah, Night Flight. It's just hard to describe this time that's so different than now. It's just, it's like talking about Neanderthal times or something.
And they wanted something palatable, something, when they wanted a Whip It video, did they give you any guidance at all, or did you still basically have carte blanche, and so you said, we're going to give them the most despicable example of what they actually want? That's kind of what happened, right?
We weren't being reactionary to it. We just were who we were, and we did what we did. And so to say, go make a pop hit song, you would say it to us and it would go, we'd be like, we don't even think that way. Wouldn't even know what the first... I read something where Sting said, I wake up in the morning and by noon I can have a pop song written, a top 10. How do you even think about your music like that? I was so...
Yeah, to be honest, we couldn't do that. We just did things we could think of, honestly and earnestly. We liked originality, silly, us. And we didn't put anything on a record we didn't like. So when suddenly they liked Whip It, we're like, wow, they like Whip It? Okay.
Okay, then let's go back a little bit. And I know that you have a story for why Girl You Want looks so horrible, why it is purple. There is a very deliberate story that's a good one about
It's on purpose, yeah.
Yes.
We were learning about video correction at the time. There was a switch.
Yeah, it was out of phase, and the guy apologized for it, and Mark and I were in the, editing bay, and we go, wait, can you put it back like that? Wait a minute, that's what happens?
Yeah, but that's not the hardest film to watch. The hardest ones are the ones on the blue screen where it just looks like you had a pair of those scissors where they...
Yeah.
Hey, I got one question, not to go off topic, but did you put those domes in the picture today? And
Wow.
just for tonight, or are they up there all the time?
You guys are in the right
Is that what we
place.
got there? I don't think we were ever here.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys were ahead of the story.
Well, it's classic geometry. It's deco, and then it rears its head again in mid-century 50s. And it endures. That's why people, after they got done laughing at the Red Hats, they all wanted to buy them. But anyway, getting back to Whip It, it was like we were just elated that we were going to get to make another video. We just wanted to produce work. And of course, everything was extremely low budget. But we luckily had what's called a production deal with the record company because they never knew what to make of Devo, because they were kind of supporting a wacky artist and kind of giving you enough rope to hang yourself. They just let us do what we wanted to do to see if we could make them money. So we controlled that budget, and we made Whip It for $15,000 in a 16-hour day. And
On one soundstage, right?
on
Yeah.
our rehearsal hall.
Oh, that's an
We
SIR.
amused them because we traded our money for, our royalties and everything for artistic sensibility, for artistic control.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, you guys want to paint the fence yourself? Well,
So to answer
you'll
Peter's,
pay us?
sorry. Yeah, to answer Peter's question, they weren't even sophisticated enough about videos to come and make me write a treatment and okay it. They just let us go. And we had an idea of what we always wanted to do for Whip It if we could make a video to Whip It. And it was based on this cheesy men's magazine that was about B- level, about a
Some Las Vegas performer.
yeah. As a matter of fact, recently when the people doing the documentary from Vice were researching, they found the actual magazine and the actual title of the men's magazine, and it's a black and white spread about a stuntman who moves out of LA and opens a dude ranch in Arizona, and his wife was a stripper originally, and he would entertain the guests at noon in the corral by whipping his wife's clothes off. And of course, we were always looking at junk and low art and transgressive stuff and cheesy stuff, as well as very pretentious high art stuff. And we, on purpose, would combine what we used to talk about is the high and the low, way before Jeff Koons ever said that. And that's what we were doing on purpose. So that's what you see in Whip It.
You see a lot of low Devo in these films.
Well, we apologize. I mean, a politically correct person is going to look at Whip It now in retrospect and go, that's racist, that's sexist, that's tasteless. We're going, yep.
Well,
You asked for it.
But I hope you laughed.
Yeah. So let's see, what else? Do we want to open it up to the audience? There are some microphones out there. I think they're being passed around. I'm seeing a gesture from Eli. I see. They're on either. Oh, they're up there. I see. So
They are
sounds like you have to
unoccupied
make
at the
a
moment.
queue to go up there and get in. Oh, I
there's
see.
someone, whoever gets to the mics first
That's right.
are the winners.
Wow.
There he is.
Go.
Speak loud.
Thanks for doing this, guys. It was amazing. You're right. Are You Experienced looked incredible, better than I've ever seen it before. That was just unbelievable.
Thank you, Peter. That was the idea.
Since you were talking about Whip It, casting the extras, were those just friends of yours, or where did those people come from? That's it. Thanks for coming.
I don't know where we got that.
Well, given the budgets we had, we would always work, and our aesthetic, by the way, we would always work with non-actors because it would amuse us more to have people that weren't good at what they were doing in the videos.
Because they were less expensive.
It fit the aesthetic. It's kind of like we had a little troupe. It's like John Waters in our own way. And yes, those people, they were out of work actors, the two male cowboys, and the one...
Rod was our only real actor.
Right, Rod
Rod
Ruder.
Actually,
Michael Schwartz.
I don't know what he acted in, but he acted in something, didn't he?
Really bad movies. Yeah.
Well,
But he was
okay,
also-
that's something.
But he was also one of James Brown's backup singers.
That's
at one
true.
point.
He was a James Brown backup.
Yeah.
Truth about
He danced on Where the Action Is. So the two females in the corral, one's my girlfriend and one is the guy that designed the sets, John Zabrucki, who owned this great props company. It was his girlfriend. And then the old woman and the young girl were baristas at the Brentwood Country Mart, where I would go every morning to have espresso, and we talked him into being in the Whippet.
It was a,
She
sorry,
worked at the Buttery.
Oh, she worked at the Buttery, right?
the one that holds up the giant,
The Whippy.
the whippy. Oh, okay, all
The
right.
Whippy. She worked at the Buttery, and she was kind of like amazing. She got it. That's a case where she knew what she was doing, and people had told her she looks like Grace Jones, and she wanted to be in that video and wanted to do that, and so she was the star.
I want to move to that side.
I wanted to ask, we've already brought up the energy domes, but there's also the yellow jumpsuits, there's these weird white collars. There's a lot of costumes in a lot of Devo films. I'm just wondering, what was the process for creating those? Did you have a person? Did you design them yourselves? How'd you get those?
Yeah. We designed them ourselves, but it started off early on. I was a maintenance man, but Jerry worked at a janitorial supply company doing graphics for them. And we'd go through these catalogs and we'd see like a totally stainless steel like prison toilet. And I go, when I get a house, man, I'm gonna have a stainless steel toilet. That's so awesome looking. I love that catalog. And
Yeah, we had similar tastes from the beginning, and it was, partly industrial and partly grotesque, and we loved masks. Masks are powerful. They go back to
cheap entertainment.
the beginning of theater, and when you're trying to create an alternate reality, which Devo did, a whole kind of self-referential world and some vocabulary and jargon. These costumes were just our way of lifting us out of everyday reality and presenting people with something that could take them out of their daily lives rather than wallow in the horror of everyday life. Make you think of something else, right?
If it would have been 1920 instead of 1975,
Right.
we probably would have been at a cabaret, somewhere in Europe.
Or some of the Dada performance artists that were doing music and theater. If you've ever seen old clips of that, it's just so powerful and so ahead of its time. And of course, we were referencing that. That was the pretentious high art knowledge we had. And then we would mix that with the fact that we lived in a pretty terrible place, surrounded by right-wing evangelicals, and Ernest Angley was on television every day, and Rex Humbard's Cathedral Tomorrow, and we were inundated with this stuff that was depressing, but of course we were taking it and transforming it into something that we could, attack people with, and that was the shock value, I guess. Devo was polarizing because we weren't just passively accepting this horror around us. We were twisting it and putting it back at people.
And then I should say to the costumes also is that it's not represented in anything we saw tonight, but you guys had your alter ego band in 1979, which was Dove, the Band of Love. And Dove is like taking that evangelical spirit and turning it on its head, and you guys just wore leisure suits and orange visors, right? Like golf visors. I mean, you look kind of like horrible JCPenney straight.
Yeah, it was born-again versions of Devo songs.
And that came about because we didn't want opening acts, because they were all these terrible, like, bad rock bands that would destroy the stage, destroy your settings, burn people's ears out. And we wanted kind of more of an evening with Devo.
Yeah.
And we thought, and these promoters would go, no, you've got to have an opening act. So we talked them into letting us be the opening act as Dove, the Band of Love.
We'd have taste on mutton chops.
White patent leather shoes, and the costumes we wore, the suits, were from a real estate company called Century 21. And they were mustard-colored polyester suits with the big collars. And yeah, we were having fun. And I guess that's...
And we would get booed for the whole time. We'd be, and there'd be maybe a couple people up close to the stage, like if you're playing at the Forum or something, it's so big nobody can see who you are. And then there'd be like a few people up front that would go, wait a minute, that was just like those guys. But there'd be people just like shouting the word Devo, you know, like get off.
We want Devo, get off there, fucking asshole! And of course, this went back to our beginnings where that's what they would yell at the real Devo. You know, they would threaten us, throw beer bottles, beer cans at us. And so we thrived on this hostility, to be honest. And so we were really pleased when they hated Dove, and it was us, and they didn't even know it. You know, it was amazing.
And actually, now that I think about it, wasn't there an entire costume look that was planned for Are You Experienced for the Shout tour where you were like evil hippies? And that you got promo photos, but you never played in those.
Evil. Well, you know what? We had it wrong. If you noticed, if you looked close at the pants, somehow I thought the kids used to wear bell tops, not bell bottoms. And so we ended up with the big.
Yes, but it's true. We had a whole outfit created for us by a Japanese designer called Koshin Seto. And he was supposed to be the next big thing in America, you know.
And you all had kind of like rubber sole wigs, and
Yeah.
right? And,
Yes.
I mean, it was but you carried 45s, right? What,
Uh, well, they were actually 9mm pistols.
okay.
9mm.
But that there were no shows in those costumes, right?
No, it didn't happen.
Jerry looked like Tootsie in that wig.
Dustin. All right, let's take another one over there.
Hey, kind of a two-part question, if that's allowed. First part.
Do it really loud because I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Two-part question. First one, what was it like working with Timothy Leary? Second part, what happened to Dueling Firemen, the 3DO game, if you remember?
I don't know. Like a lot of stuff, Dueling Firemen never really made the big time, but it was crazy. You know, it was an amazing video game. They just the people that were doing it, they didn't really know how to make a video game, and they were too creative for their own good. And as far as Timothy Leary, yeah, he's in the one film.
Yeah.
Dr. Birthfood.
He's Dr. Birthfood. But you know, he's the first person that I ever met that showed me something that was AI, and this is like 25 years ago. He was so excited about it. He said, he was so excited about what was going to happen with computers and what was going to happen with AI. And, you know, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of a lame therapist, but...
No, Tim was just, he was so easy to be around, and the parties he and his wife Barbara would have weekly were incredible and filled with just a potpourri of people from denizens of the deep to the cream of the crop in Hollywood, and he was a cheerleader for the future. So he was always excited and positive and always pitching something. And he was fun to be around, believe it or not. He really was. And he was very, you know, what's the word? Cogent. You know, he made sense. He wasn't a burned out acid head.
Yeah.
That's an important distinction about him. And how about over there? I didn't mean that to be funny, but how about on that side?
Give it a shot.
Yeah, I realize tonight is all about the films, and it's wonderful to see them all in chronological sequence. I've seen maybe the majority of them before, but as I was watching tonight, I realized that I was thinking about Devo's musical evolution through time. And with the very earliest videos having a very raw electric guitar dominant sound, and then later on keyboards became more prominent. And I wanted to see what your view on that was and how that happened.
It's just, you know, it was our version of de-evolution, you know. We were working with technology. I mean, in the very first film, you know, if you listen to the Secret Agent Man song in that, it's like Jim Mothersbaugh built one of the first electronic drum kits ever. There was no such thing back in those days, and he was attaching acoustic guitar pickups onto practice pad heads and running them through fuzz tones, wah-wah pedals, echoplexes. And if you listen, it's really radical if you go back and listen to that song again, Secret Agent Man. And then we got Alan in, and he became more of a normal drummer. And, you know, we just evolved in our own way. You know, and people sent us, like, you know, we were a focal point for the nerds that were inventing electronic gear. So they would send us a lot of stuff, you know, before anybody else ever saw it, and we'd get to help program it with them and things like that, and it just kind of sucked us into the electronics.
You know, I think it was part and parcel to our quest for, you know, excitement and originality as creative people. I mean, Mark never met a piece of new electronic equipment that he didn't like initially, and I never rejected any chance to work with a new effect in video, for instance. So as you watch the music change, you're watching the way we make films turn into videos and composites and morphing and all these things that were available. But of course, we were doing it on the most rudimentary level because we never had money. Devo was the Little Rascals of tech. You know, it was a DIY aesthetic.
We did it all, yeah. I mean, the Bobs would wrangle props. It was, you know, everybody, you know, kind of pitched in. It really was like the Little Rascals.
Right.
And just to sort of contextualize his question a little bit too, each one of your albums is extremely different than the one before it, and that was very deliberate and planned, at least in the beginning, correct? So like,
Correct.
you knew what the album number 2 was going to be when you went to Germany to make album number 1. So in a sense, your evolution was charted, and the films also chart that evolution at the same time. It was sort of in the water, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's true. For better or worse, Devo is nothing if not conceptual. We were very intentional. Yeah, we knew what we wanted to do, and then we tried to do it.
I think you succeeded, wouldn't everybody say?
Somewhat.
How's that for fishing for a compliment? Okay, let's go over, I guess that's side right. I've already forgotten the order. Did I screw up?
Hi, my name is Christine, and I have also a two-part question. And my first question is, what were your interactions like with some of your contemporaries in England, like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, the Human League, Gary Newman, Thomas Dolby, Ultravox? What were that interactions like, or what was that competition like? And second is, I remember when Whippet came out, and I ran out and bought that 45, the Whippet one, but I found that I really loved Turnaround, which was the B-side, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
About Turnaround? Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody who worked for me for a number of years thought that was a Nirvana song. Was shocked when they found out it was on.
Yeah, I think their cover of it, more people heard the cover of it. But as far as the first part of your question goes, it was always nice meeting other artists who you respected or somewhat respected, who liked you. You know, like Devo is a band that appealed to other musicians and artists. That's what happened, of course, with David Bowie. That's what happened with Brian Eno. That's what happened with Iggy Pop. We did meet Ultravox, of course. We met Gary Newman. We met the Human League. You know, I liked Gary Newman very much. We saw his Pleasure Principle concert at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium in 1979. And the light show was amazing. Like, I was blown away and kind of jealous because of the originality of that. But it was nice to see something that actually piques your creative interest rather than see something tired that you're like, oh my God, that again.
I drove his little golf cart car around the stage before the show.
I mean, Jerry specifically, I remember Jerry, you telling me that a band in LA that you were really into was the Screamers. And
Yeah, they were
Screamers,
incredible.
yeah, that was,
incredibly unrepresented band by releases. They have one legitimate release, but yeah, they were really special too. And I think that was a mutual admiration society.
another one of those sad stories where they did great music and then they disappeared. You know, they huddled together to make a film and got in a fight and couldn't work together again.
Yeah, they should have been huge hits, but it just didn't happen.
Let's go to that side.
Hi, thanks for coming here. It's great to get to talk to you. I have a question.
A little louder?
Sure. Is this better?
I don't know, but keep going.
Put your
Okay.
mouth against the
Swallow the microphone
Okay,
like this.
I'll do the best I can. Thanks for coming here. It's great to get to talk to you. I have a question about some video work that you did that wasn't featured in this, The Adventures of the Smart Patrol CD-ROM that you did in the 1990s. It's kind of a shame because it's kind of lost media now. You can't really get it, but it seems like it has a lot of effort put into it. And it has that whole song, That's What He Said, that you can't get anywhere. And I was just wondering what your role was in working on that, what it was like, and if you might ever put parts of it back together and release it again someday.
I think that technology is so outmoded. You know, what we wanted to do with that was use the programs that people were using for first-person shooter games at the time. But of course, Inkscape, the company that greenlit the idea, they couldn't give us that kind of money. So they relegated us to the point-and-click kind of technology, right? With
He gets emotional.
yeah.
This comment.
Inkscape really does it to him.
Well, because we did work hard on that. I mean, I really worked hard on that, and you wouldn't believe how there was a 300-page interactive script because the player, the user, depending on what they chose to do, would set themselves off on a different path with a different outcome with the characters in the game. Because there were bad guys like the Pilgrims, and there were good guys at Universal Health Systems, and there was an epidemic disease called acetylbucomyelitis, and it turned your bones to jelly, and Universal Health Systems was exploiting that to make billions of dollars off of people to sell them useless products like the Universal Walker and the Universal Car Seat, and, you know, not far off from reality, obviously. And these things were all worked out and laid out. And the programmers kept wanting to complicate things even further. They go, oh no, there's not enough choices in this game yet, you know? You gotta go through 12 hours of action. And we did all this. It took months. And then it got reduced to these silly little, you know, avatars that moved like this. And it was tedious.
From an archival perspective, to answer your question, I actually did find and transfer some of the raw material that you shot, and it's incredibly complicated. You have all these actors doing all these things, and you're giving these really explicit directions. It's very dense, and there's hours and hours of raw footage. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a shame that it doesn't have more.
Yeah, because we had to get them in every position. We had to get them talking, to get every consonant and vowel, all that stuff.
It'll play for about 3 minutes.
Yeah, not fun.
Okay,
But the soundtrack, that would be available again easily.
yeah. I mean, that came out in a CD, didn't it? Or is the Adventures of Smart Controls, wasn't it an album of some sort? Or
You'd
compilation?
have to ask Mike Pilmer. He's the
Oh,
one
yeah,
who's
yeah, he's the other artist.
rooting around.
The bargain bins. Okay, over there.
So I have a two-part question. My first question is, what exact films were inspired your aesthetic and your color palette as well?
What films inspired your aesthetic, particular films, and also your color palette, your unique color palette?
Oh, the color palette, that was less of a choice, somewhat more determined by the fact that we were working with this guy, Chuck Statler, who had been my friend at Kent State and started working with us because he had a camera. But he lit everything with industrial lighting because he had learned how to make film from being hired to do industrials. And we were using colors, reversal stock, Ektachrome, Kodak Ektachrome, which was the big deal at the time. And it makes everything super saturated and lurid, like
Yeah.
kind of like Technicolor.
Yeah. He had a big influence on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a part of it.
Yeah, so it's lit flat and bright, so everything
All
is
that early-
lurid.
How about specific films that
Oh, well, yeah, I
Question.
mean, but there's so many. I mean, we were influenced, of course, by German expressionist films. Big time, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and,
Island of Lost Souls.
of course. Are we not men?
yeah, and all the Dutch angles, super high angle and low angle shots, all that kind of stuff came from the classic pantheon of great movies starting even before the talkies. And then, of course, early American noir. And then up into the 60s, Dr. Strangelove. Also cheesy stuff like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, the Russ Meyer movie, is so amazing for what it is. It's like kitsch elevated to high art.
We would watch bad industrial films, just
Yeah.
we could laugh at the way they were made and the way they looked, and the whole mentality of them made us so happy.
The second question I wanted to ask was, it relates to my Eraserhead t-shirt. Is there any footage from the Duty Now for the Future tour of Boogie Boy singing In Heaven? Because that's like my favorite rendition of that song.
I have.
Oh, you wanna?
Is there any footage of Boogie Boy singing
Yeah.
"In Heaven Everything Is Fine"?
I don't think so.
I'm afraid there isn't, and that just
No,
bums me out that there isn't.
I've never seen any in my searching ever.
Yeah.
Another thing that unfortunately we missed out on is for one of our interstitial shots, so that our crew could change over our set on stage while we were just doing something else. We had this footage with Boogie Boy and his dad, and Boogie Boy's head gets crushed, and then that woman from Eraserhead, she's dressed as a nurse, and she comes out and unveils him, and it's the Boogie Boy mask turned inside out, splattered with Vaseline, and then a light came on, and he came out on a wheelchair on stage and sang a song about wanting to return to the tunnel of life, and we never filmed that.
Wait a minute, that's the.
Because we have the first part on film,
Oh, we have
where his
it.
head gets crushed.
We have it. We have
And
it.
the special effects for that are like cheeseburgers or something. It's like when you just his head.
It's exquisitely unconvincing.
It is very low, Devo. Very, very low. I will say that we almost put that into the show. We kind of have something up our sleeve, and it didn't really work out, and maybe someday it will, but you'll see that footage again, for sure.
Thank you very much.
That side, please.
Hey guys, so back in the early 80s, you were in a Neil Young directed movie alongside Dean Stockwell, Dennis Hopper, Russ Tamblyn. Did that influence any of your creative decisions or videos or your perception of film at all?
I mean, you saw a clip of it tonight.
I mean, I'll be honest, actually not.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I remember we kind of like poo-pooed the film when it first got made, and then I went and saw it like 10 years later at a little, art theater, and there was like 20 people there, and I'm like, that's actually pretty good. Pretty good
I mean, we were really serious about our aesthetic at that point in time, and we had, been formed in austerity and low budgets, and to watch what we were watching go on at this huge soundstage at Paramount, where there was so much chaos and irresponsibility, and they were just.
That was it was all the things like, they were all drunk and high.
Cocaine is in that movie, I think.
Everything,
A lot of it.
every drug.
What I'm saying is just, it was kind of like, it was more like, for us, it was harder to connect with them because they were like at the very end of the word hippie. But when I went back and looked at the film, it made me think of stuff like Robert Downey Sr. And I started thinking of how they looked like they kind of had the same aesthetic as him, and it made me appreciate them a lot more.
Yeah, it was, for me, it was shocking to watch somebody with such a big set of crayons, you know, like such a huge canvas to work on, be this irresponsible when I was just begging for one tiny piece of that. And they did let us direct our own scene and built a set that I asked for.
And that's what Worried Man was.
And
we saw
that's what
tonight.
you see. We decided, oh, we're going to be nuclear waste workers.
He just wrote a whole section of his film.
Yeah, and
But
because
that was his aesthetic, and I only really understood it years later.
you know, Neil would change every day. That film would every month have a new idea, but he decided Cal Neva, you know, was this nuclear power station in his movie. And so we thought, that's great, we'll be nuclear waste workers disgruntled, you know, and that'll be the setting for Worried Man.
Yeah.
Which was a dub song too, so that kind of, I mean, it wasn't dub written, it's a
Dub did a version.
dub
yeah.
did a version. Yeah.
Well, when Neil heard it, he loved it. He asked for that song. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Next, please.
Thank you so much for coming to Silver Spring tonight. I just want to say this was incredible. And also, when and this goes to Mark. Thank you so much for inspiring countless childhoods by Pee-wee's Playhouse, Rugrats, and especially Thor Ragnarok. Thank you so much. I'm a working artist striving to be an actor, and I just want to say those avant-garde surrealist sensibilities deeply inspires me. I'm a tremendous fan and admirer of that surrealism movement, and just thank you so much for being so inspirational and influential to countless other artists
Okay, thank you. You know what, if you were right here, I'd tickle you. Why, darn you, little whippersnapper.
That was a nice way to wrap
Thank
this
you.
up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Really. As the Elephant Man said, so kind.
Let's just do one more since we have this pilot over here. One more.
Also thank you for coming to Silver Spring. It's kind of incredible that Devo's here. Thank you, Mark, for coming to Silver Spring. Two parts. One, did you ever find that the Devo concept and universe constrained you at all in writing songs, or did it limit you at all in what did you feel constrained by the concept when you were ever doing the albums?
You know what? I think we felt just the opposite. I think it gave us focus, which is even more important than worried about all the things that hold you down. It's like by having a focus, we were able to stay pretty true to what we wanted to say, you know.
Yeah, it made us write a certain way and think a certain way, but we liked that. We were imposing it on ourselves on purpose to go somewhere else other than what most people do. So, yes, there were bands that could play 10 times as many notes as Devo. They could sing, you know, octaves above and below Devo. They looked like leading men, but nobody had our ideas, and nobody wrote our kind of lyrics and made our kind of progressions.
On that note, thank you all for coming, and thanks to Janet